All right. So welcome to another episode of the Humanization Project. I'm here this morning with my friend David Smith, who's going to chat with us. When I first met David, I knew that I wanted to interview him. He's got a very interesting story to tell, and most importantly, as we always like to emphasize, the people that I love interviewing are the people that are doing really good work in the world, and David is certainly doing that. He's got a lot of things going on that he's doing, and I'm always so incredibly impressed with everything. You've got your hand in lots of stuff, and you're doing really good work. So as I usually like to start out, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
About myself, okay, my name's David Smith. I'm 41 years old now. I guess I'm getting old. I've been out since about 2016 and have been in Richmond that whole time. I grew up near here, went to school at Mary Washington, went off to seminary in St. Louis at Concordia Seminary. Got married, had 3 kids, got arrested, got divorced, and yeah, so I work for an insurance company now. I am active in the community, and I love being outside. So yeah. So you were just telling me a little bit about that. You said one of your favorite things is to go outside in the woods and to run, right? Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I spent 16 and a half months in solitary confinement, and during that time period, you're in a cinder block box, no nature, no outside, and I was always kind of an outdoorsy person. I like camping, I like hiking and backpacking, but it wasn't until I got out that I started running a lot. I ran a little bit when I was at Lunenburg, but then when I got out, I started running on trails. Like, where has this been my whole life? Oh my goodness. And it's just so much fun because it's the antithesis of solitary confinement. I go from a place where I was confined to a cinder block box to a place filled with so much nature that it can be overwhelming on one of those nice, cool, moist mornings when the smells are just so incredible. In addition to my trail running, I'm doing my first 50K, my first ultra run in February. And I've taken a trip to Utah and a trip to Colorado. And within the last few months since I got off probation, just bummed around the parks and went hiking and just camped out. And it was so beautiful and such the opposite of where I spent those 3 years of my life.
Right. So we kind of jump right into that because it's part of the work that you're doing since you've been out. But tell us a little bit more. So you were in solitary confinement for your own protection, right?
Yes. My attorney was friends with the sheriff in Norfolk, and they thought they were doing me a favor. Like, oh, we'll put him, this white guy, he's a preacher, he got arrested. We'll put him in solitary confinement because he's from the suburbs and we're the city. We just don't want him. He's not got a good place for him. We'll keep him safe there. And I didn't know any better. I had visited a guy who was incarcerated for a little while when I was a pastor, but that was really my only experience with the criminal justice system. So, like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do this. And the thing about being in solitary, if you don't realize the negative effects, which nobody was telling me about negative effects of being in solitary,
right.
You don't realize what's going on in your mind until you get out. You don't realize that talking to TV characters is a sign of mental disorder. You don't realize that you're so depressed because you don't have the wherewithal to recognize that the depression is real in you. You just feel like, oh, you know what? If this place catches on fire because I smell smoke, well, that's the way I die. All right. That you're not willing to fight for yourself anymore. So yeah, solitary confinement had a lot of those negative effects. I was fortunate though. I'd gone to rehab before I was sentenced. So I'd had a 40-day intensive residential rehab, which really got a lot of the mess cleared out of my mind, got me on a lot of a really solid foundation for my mental health.
Yeah.
There are other guys in there. I mean, most people didn't have that privilege, but there are other guys in there that just went straight from whatever mess they were in real life to solitary.
Right.
And you could see the way it affected them. You could see the degradation in their lives, how they would just lay in their own feces for days on end. And because that's all they cared to do. And that's all that was allowed for them to do. So, yeah. But yeah, spend a little time in solitary. So now I work to try to end solitary in Virginia. That's one of the projects I'm working on is with the Virginia Coalition Against Solitary Confinement. I'm their coordinator and we are introducing legislation this year to end solitary confinement in Virginia, except in the most extreme situations. Last year, we had a bill passed almost unanimously. Actually, I think it was unanimously to report on how is solitary confinement used in Virginia. How many people are there? How long do they stay? What gets people put in solitary? Such like that.
Right.
And the incredible thing is, 3 years ago, so we're going into the 2020 session right now. In the 2018 session, we introduced legislation and couldn't even get a reporting bill passed. So the movement that has happened just within these few years on solitary confinement in Virginia has just been incredible. Just the progress has been made because of the work of the ACLU, because of folks like me sharing their stories, saying, hey, you know what, it's not the worst of the worst that are being held in solitary. It's average people that for whatever reason, somebody thinks that's the best place to put them.
Right, and I think that is completely, the general public is thinking like, oh, if somebody's in solitary, they must be like a complete threat. They must be completely violent. They must be doing horrible, uncontrollable things. And that isn't true for pretty much most of the people that are in there, right?
Exactly. So there's this Hannibal Lecter image. I was at a symposium on solitary confinement at Northwestern University Law School in Chicago a few weeks ago, beginning of November. And one of the presenters was like, I wish Hannibal Lecter had never been a thing.
Right.
Because that's what's in the popular mind for solitary confinement. But the reality is, I was put in solitary confinement, to keep the suburban white guy safe. Another guy beside me was in solitary because about 5 years before this arrest, he had tried to escape from police. So, he's a flight risk, so solitary confinement. And mind you, this is a big city jail.
Right.
You've got to go through probably 10 locked doors to get from a cell to the outside.
Right.
So you're not, there are other guys that were there because they were witnesses. They hadn't even been convicted of a crime yet, but they were witnesses in another trial. And they were there on some small charge. But they needed to keep them separate from other people so they couldn't corroborate stories. So they were in solitary confinement for longer than I was.
Wow.
Because they were there when I got there and they were there when I left.
So they hadn't been charged with a crime?
Well, they'd been charged with a crime. It wasn't a serious crime. Their main issue was they were being held on these charges. Like, how you'll be arrested sometimes on minor charges because they want to get you to testify against somebody else. So that's what's going on here. They'd agreed to testify, but then they needed to keep them safe because they're snitches. They need to keep them from sharing their stories to get their stories corroborated. So that's the sheriff and the police saying that.
So they've been arrested for something minor. They're going to testify, but they themselves have not been convicted.
Have not been convicted.
Right?
Correct. Yes.
And I think that's another thing that people don't realize is a lot of people in solitary haven't been convicted yet. Like nobody's proven that they've done what they're saying that they've done. Which is, I think, really weird to think about. Like, people don't understand that.
Yeah, I think most people in city jails, probably close to, I hate numbers because I don't know it off the top of my head. I'm going to say somewhere around 50%, 40% maybe, have not actually been convicted of a crime yet.
Right.
If they're in the city jail, if they're in the regional jail. Because they're waiting there for the trial because of the way the bond system is. If you're making the minimum wage and you get arrested, you're not going to be able to post a $10,000 bond,
right?
Let alone a $50,000 bond for a more serious crime.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in there. Or if they think you're a flight risk because you don't really have any connections to the community because you don't have a job, well, no bond is issued. So there you are again. Yeah. So you're spending your time in jail waiting for your court date.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so crazy. So I feel like we jumped into the heavy stuff really quick.
I always do that. I'm sorry.
And I do that too sometimes, but let's back up a little bit. So you mentioned at the beginning that you had a family before you were arrested, and you still have a family, but that you have kids.
Yes, I do.
So can you just tell us a little bit about them?
So So when I was arrested, my oldest daughter was in 8th grade. My son was in 5th grade. 5th grade, and my youngest daughter was in 1st grade. So it's been a few years. So now my oldest is a junior in college. My son is applying for college, a senior in high school. And then my youngest daughter is in 8th grade.
Wow.
So.
And do you get to see them much?
Not as much as I'd like to. I'm working on that right now. Get to talk to him on the phone every now and then, but yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. It was when I got arrested, I had that ideal middle class American life. Nice house on the cul-de-sac, wife, 3 kids, some pets, 2-week family vacations. We both had solid jobs. Didn't really have any cares on the outside.
Right.
But yeah, so that hit hard when I got arrested. It shook a lot of confidence. So it's been a rebuilding process.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When you were inside, did you have much contact with the kids then?
So when I was in the city jail, solitary there, my wife would bring the kids down every single weekend. So in Norfolk, you don't have contact visitation. It's only video visitation. So they'd go into a room downstairs, I think it was on the first floor, and sit in front of a computer monitor basically, and I would be taken into another room on my floor, and I would talk to them over basically a computer screen. And she could bring 2 kids, so every week would be my youngest, and one of the 2 oldest would come. So yeah, it was a little bit of happiness. It was every Saturday morning. There were about 7 guys on my cell block, and they always knew that Saturday morning, Smith's got his visitation. Smith's got his video going on. So they watch out for me too. We had a rolling video screen. Some of the COs would try to, or some of the deputies would try to use, where they would roll it up in front of your cell. They would open up the chuckle, the little metal flap, slide you in the phone, the receiver, and then you would try to situate yourself so the little camera on the screen on the monitor could get you while you're talking on the phone, looking at an angle through the one part of your window, your door that's about yay by yay, that isn't cloudy. And that was the way it was supposed to work if you were in solitary.
Oh my gosh.
But luckily that phone never worked, or if it did, you pretended that it didn't work, so that whatever deputy was there that tried to use it would then just slide it down, get rid of it, and take you into the side room where they had the video visitation set up. Wow. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So they were expecting you to look out a little slot in your door to see a video screen to see your kids. Yeah,
well, my first time with a video visit was when I had first been arrested. So I spent 6 days in solitary when I first got arrested, before I had a bond hearing. That's the joys of being arrested right before a holiday weekend. And I remember my wife came in, or had come in for a visit, and so she got on her thing at her side, and I picked up and started talking to her. She's like, "I can't see you," because the video, the camera was facing right into the door, and I couldn't at that point. I couldn't figure out how to adjust it because the angles and the length of the cord and everything like that, and so you're basically just getting a phone call. So yeah,
that's crazy. I am continually amazed when I speak with people, and when my partner and I interact. Of course, he's locked up as well, but there's so many little things that people can't even imagine that go into the whole entire experience that are continually dehumanizing, right? Like for me, when I hear that you didn't get a contact visit with your kids, that makes me very sad. Like, you didn't get to hug them for a very, very long time, right?
Yeah, and that wasn't just the folks in solitary, that was anybody in that city jail.
Yeah, and so that's crazy. I think, we usually think that people get to visit their families and stuff, and so, there's that element of like, oh wait, you only had a video visit, even though they had to show up there in person.
Yes.
Right? But then now you're saying, like, not only were you expected to look at them on a video screen, but there was really no effort made to make sure that you could actually see, or they could actually, like, that's just crazy. It's all these little tiny things add up to just make the experience so incredibly dehumanizing.
And that's why I do the work I do now. I realize I'm in a really unique situation. Not many people can walk into a legislator's office and say, "Hey, I was in solitary confinement," and look like their brother or their son. And can articulate what's going on and share those stories.
Yes.
I can get that seat at the table that a lot of people wouldn't be able to get. And I see these guys that are fighting. Oh my goodness. There are guys that are in prison now, in Virginia prisons, fighting for their rights, organizing people together to say, look, these are what our rights are. The Constitution does not stop at the prison walls.
Right.
And that's one of the things that was written in one of the Supreme Court opinions, is the Constitution does not stop at those prison walls. And so we've got guys in there that are being sent to solitary for organizing a riot, because what do? They met with other folks who are incarcerated and let them know what their legal rights are, what their constitutional rights are. And when I was locked up, I was so demoralized, so depressed, that I wasn't willing to fight. I wasn't able to fight. Now that I am where I am, it's like, you know what? These guys are putting it on the line. They're willing to go back to solitary confinement just to let other people know what their legal rights are in this country. And it's like, you know what? I gotta fight then. I gotta get up there and let my voice be heard. I've got to magnify their voices from behind those walls. One of the things I really love that the Virginia Prison Justice Network does is we have this rally on the state capitol every year. It's going to be the third year this year. And at that rally, we read out letters from folks that are incarcerated. People that don't get that voice are having their voice heard by hundreds of people that morning. And that just brings me so much joy, so much strength in knowing that we can magnify those voices, that we can let their voices be raised up, that their concerns become our concerns, that their struggles are our struggles.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So tell me a little bit more about all of these things that you're working on for people who are still incarcerated, because you've got so many, and I know there's a big list.
It's really been a progression. So when I was in solitary, myself and the guy beside me, his nickname was Born Star. We would talk back and forth because our cells were right beside each other, so we could hear each other real well. We would talk back and forth about what were we going to do when we got out, and we would like work on each other's business plans. So he was going to work on becoming a rapper. We were talking about like, how do you get your music out there? How do you sell it? How do you build a following? How do you get these gigs? Stuff like that. My idea was basically to become a life coach for people who'd been incarcerated. So that's where it started.
Right.
That idea failed miserably. A lot of stories, I won't go into exactly why, but yeah, that didn't get off the ground. But the other thing I did when I was at that point in solitary is I started writing. I mentioned I was a pastor. I'd had a crisis of faith before my arrest, and it basically turned my back on God, even though I was still preaching. And the arrest was like God's hammer coming down and smashing me up, saying, no, you've had enough of this. And I read the Bible all the way through a couple times. And during that time, I was looking for verses that spoke to the incarceration experience. They would bring us our daily bread devotionals. I don't know if you are folks that are Christian and are familiar with those, but they're these sweet little devotionals where think about when you went outside yesterday. Think about when you took your kid to school. Think about that last time when you hugged your friend. And I'm like, this is crap. This is not my life here.
Right.
But yet this is what I'm being given by the chaplain to try to give me spiritual strength and encouragement. Like, this sucks. So I went through the Bible and I began to pull out verses that I thought spoke to our experience. The struggle, the punishment, the separation, the sin, the brokenness. And use those to create a 1-year devotional, 365 days of devotions to bring hope into that place of misery. And so that's what I started doing there. That was really my first project that got off the ground when I got out. So I put those up on Amazon, and I put them basically as cheap as I could on Amazon because I want them to get in the hands of people that are incarcerated. And so anywhere from like 30 to 60 get bought a month, and that makes me happy because that means that's 30 or 60 more going to people that need them. So I'm really excited about that. So about a year or so after my release, actually it might have been about 6 months, I guess, there was a documentary being shown at the Virginia Historical Society called, it was called Solitary. It was an HBO documentary about Red Onion. I was like, oh, I want to go see this. So I go there and I meet afterwards the director of Interfaith Action for Human Rights. I tell them my story. It's like, look, I was in solitary. Let me know what I can do to help. Time goes by, we kind of email every now and then. And about 7 months later, he gives me a call and says, hey, look, there's this meeting in Fredericksburg. It's the Virginia Coalition Against Solitary Confinement. I'd like to invite you to come and join us. So, okay, sure. Let me go check this thing out. So show up. It's like, you guys are actually working to end solitary confinement. Like, there are people that actually care about this issue. Oh my goodness. I was excited. I mean, yeah. So I became involved in that, and then increased my involvement with Interfaith Action for Human Rights, began to do a lot of work with legislators, talking with legislators, sharing my story with legislators. About the same time as well, I found out about OAR. I was looking at a way of trying to give back more to the community, and I was working. I could only find a part-time job that worked as far as making money, and I want to volunteer somewhere. So I got connected with OAR and began working in their rec room there.
What does OAR stand for?
Opportunity Alliance Reentry.
Thank you.
So yeah, they are the largest reentry services provider in the Central Virginia area.
Right.
So I started working with them, and it was just this wonderful experience of being able to go in there into this computer lab called the rec room, help people find housing and jobs and learn basic computer skills. Because you've been locked up since the mid-90s. The computers weren't a thing back then. The internet wasn't a thing back then. I mean, I used the internet for the first time in '96 when I was in high school, and I remember being the craziest thing where the librarian took me to this back room and turned on the computer, and there's like this black and white screen, and he types in some text, and a long string of text pops up. And so here you have guys that can press a button, and all of a sudden you've got streaming video. It was like, it's weird. Right. The idea of email. Yeah. I mean, I was down for 2.5 years. I get out and my Gmail looks completely different than it did when I got locked up. It's like, I don't know how to follow the question, the lines of thought in this email now. It's like, which is first, which is last? And I was only down for 3 years. Right. I mean, if you've never used it before, and you're like, So being able to help folks with that, being able to encourage people as a guy who had been incarcerated, so they can look at me and say, you know what? You were where I was. Yeah. Our stories might not be identical, but we're sharing that same story. Plus, I'm on their board now, which is great because it brings that voice of somebody who's been through incarceration, who has to deal with those struggles, alongside the voices of those who say, this is an injustice. Yeah. These are folks that have been abused by the system, so we need to do what we can to lift them up so they have that chance to succeed again. But yeah. Cool.
Is that all your organizations?
Okay, so we did OAR, we did Interfaith Action for Human Rights, we did the Virginia Coalition Against Solitary Confinement. Oh yeah, and the Virginia Prison Justice Network. Did I already mention them?
Maybe kind of briefly, but tell us more about that one.
So the Virginia Prison Justice Network is one that I'm really excited about. It's much more grassroots than the other groups I've worked with. And it started with two guys who were locked up, and it was their idea to really raise up the voices of those that are being affected by incarceration as they're locked up, to really tell those stories, so that people know what's going on behind those walls. They were organizing people, I shouldn't say organizers isn't the right word, they were teaching people their constitutional rights, because the Constitution does not end at the prison wall, right? So they were teaching people their constitutional rights, and they got sent to solitary for inciting a riot.
Right. So these were the guys you were talking about earlier.
Oh yes,
yeah. Cool.
So yeah, that's the Virginia Prison Justice Network. It's a wonderful group of folks. Basically, it's an umbrella organization of all these different grassroots and larger organizations working in this area. Yeah. So we're talking major statewide groups like ACLU of Virginia, to smaller organizations where it's basically just two folks working together to try to let stories be known of people out in Southwest Virginia that are affected by incarceration. Right. So I mean, it's this wonderful broad coalition, people all coming together to support those that are incarcerated and those affected by incarceration.
And that's actually how you and I met.
Exactly, yeah. We met one of the original meetings a couple months ago, yeah.
So that's good, but I don't think we've ever talked about it in our interviews. So this is great just to kind of have it explained from your perspective. So I feel like you've got all these things that you're doing, and you've got your kids and all this stuff, but sometimes I like to ask people, and it always kind of surprises me. Sometimes I think I know what people will say, but sometimes I don't. What is it that you're the most passionate about right now in your life?
The most passionate? Well, I guess it depends on how you define passionate. If you are looking at what am I spending the most time on, it's training for this 50K. I never thought I would run a long distance.
Yeah.
Last winter, I started helping a friend of mine train for a trail marathon. And I work out with this group, and they were somehow tied in with the trail marathon. When they found out I was helping train this guy, I got a free entry. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll run it after all. So it was like a last minute decision of mine. I think I signed up like 5 days ahead of time. And this is a secret that nobody told me about running long distances in the woods in these organized races. They feed you.
Oh.
It's running from buffet to buffet to buffet.
Really?
I'm talking peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, M&Ms, chips, pretzels, oranges. I mean, you've got your little sports drinks and your goo energy stuff like that. But yeah, like every 3 miles, there's an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's like, why has nobody told me this? First, nobody told me I could go running through the woods. Now, nobody told me if I do an organized run through the woods, they feed me every few miles. So, but yeah, so I love that. And the solitary work, really, that's what I'm really trying to emphasize right now. It's a balance for me. At my job, I've been fortunate. It's to get a decent paying job with a company with great benefits. When I went through the hiring process, they did not ask about any criminal conviction, any criminal history until after they offered me the job. And it was an insurance company. I was like, oh crap, well there goes that when they actually ask about it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we'd have to check with compliance. I'm like, oh, compliance, that's like what every word, nobody wants to hear that as a record. And they get back with me and say, yeah, you're fine.
Do you feel like that was just like a lucky thing for you? Because you work with other people who have gotten out through your OIR work. Do you feel like people really struggle with getting work after they get out, or
there is a massive struggle? So unless you have some type of trade, mechanic, HVAC, something along those lines, where you can, where people are in desperate need of folks to work in those fields, those trades there's a lot more demand than there is supply of folks that can do the job. So they're not looking at backgrounds for the most part. I mean, maybe certain jobs, if you're going to certain places, but I mean, the average HVAC or plumbing or mechanics job, like, can you do the work? You're hired. If you've got a CDL, can you do the work? You're hired. I mean, I saw a guy a couple months out to get a job, a CDL job, because he had a CDL, and they're like, we don't care what your record is. If you can drive a truck, get in there. We need the bodies. But beyond that, I didn't come from a trade background. I had done undergrad, I did grad school, and my first job out, I got only because I'd been introduced to this guy at Good Samaritan Ministries before I was sentenced through a mutual friend. And he's like, look, if you go to prison, I've got a job for you and a place for you to live when you get out. I was like, this is incredible. But it was a part-time job. And I mean, I worked my way up there. But when I left, I was, when I started there, I was basically just cleaning up apartments. And when I left, I was in charge of the apartments. I was the property manager. But I think if you are willing to work hard and you know what your skill set is that you bring. So the job I have now, this insurance company, I'm in their assistance department, helping people figure out how to handle disasters that happen when they travel. I was a pastor. Life disasters was my sweet spot. I mean, that's my wheelhouse right there. So you call me up and your loved one has had a motorbike accident in Vietnam, I got you. You got bit by a rabbit in Africa, I'm there for you. I mean, your loved one passes away and we're trying to get the remains home of your loved one. That's stuff that I brought the skill set to. So I think for guys and women, of course, getting out, it's a matter of saying, what are my skills? And then what will society allow me to do? So one of the things I looked at doing, I really looked into getting into fundraising, development. I've been a pastor. We had some really good fundraising success under my time. I was like, this was something that I really enjoyed. Find a project that I can get behind and do it. So I went out, I networked, I met with a lot of people in the community that were in charge of major organizations in Richmond. And they would sit down with me, I'd tell them my story, and they would give me feedback. And that's the real thing that really surprised me is, if you're out there looking for a job and you don't know what steps to take, you reach out to the owner of the business and say, you know what, I know you're not hiring right now, but can we talk about this so I can find out what makes me the best candidate?
Yeah.
And they want to talk to you. I mean, I'm sitting down with CEOs of foundations, and as a guy who's been out of prison for like 6 months, and they've given me table space. They're giving me time on their calendar because it's something that people at that level, they want to develop as folks. And for me, I realized that what I could do in that area was not something that would appeal to me. Basically, it's like, look, you can't be a major gifts person. You would never be a director person in one of these organizations. I mean, maybe it was specialized in something that criminal justice, such like that. But you would be like annual fund where you're managing a project. And like, that really doesn't appeal to me that much. I'm pushing paper all day. So I took a step back and I applied for this job at the insurance company just on a whim. And I asked for the position that I ended up getting because, oh, hey, it pays $1 extra an hour. Yeah, sign me up for that. And I ended up loving it. So I've been there for over a year now. And had a discussion with my manager the other day about my future with the company. And she looks at me like, I don't want to lose you. Like, tell me what you want and we'll keep you in this department. So it's like, if you're willing to work and you're able to figure out what your skill set is and how that can apply in today's job market, you're going to find a job. I mean, I see guys every day find jobs. I also see guys every day not finding jobs because they're applying for jobs that don't fit their skill set or that society is not comfortable with folks with a record having at this point. And I mean, it sucks we have to do that, but we can work to change society, but we also have to get paid while we're working to change society.
So yeah, we got on a tangent there. So you were saying you're lucky because you got this job, but it's allowing you to.
It wasn't just like, it was finding something that matched my skill set. And that, I think, is something that is hard for a lot of us getting out, is being honest about what are our skills. Because we can either undersell ourselves because, oh, we've been locked up, nobody wants to hire a felon, nobody wants to hire someone with a record, or we can totally overestimate our skills. Like, of course I can do this because I'm awesome and I'm going to prove to the world that I can do anything. So it's a matter of being realistic and then going with that. Yeah, it was lucky that I happened to sign up for this job fair at the insurance company. But it also was me knowing what I was good at. And having worked for like a year and a half, almost 2 years before that, really hard and advancing where I was and doing this other stuff too. That's one of the things that just because you might not be working full time doesn't mean you can't put yourself into full-time productivity. So there are a lot of guys I'll see at OAR that'll volunteer there. It's like, you know what? I'm working part-time, just like I was. I'm working part-time, but I'm going to make sure I fill up my other hours so I don't end up being lazy, so I don't get pulled back into the life I was in before, stuff like that. So
cool. This is so great. I'm enjoying talking to you.
So
let's see. We talked a little bit about your family before you got locked up. But you've got your job and you're out and you're doing all this amazing work. And how is family life going now? You know, you have a girlfriend now, right?
I do. Yes, so, you know her as well. Family life is an interesting progression because incarceration affects you. I mean, it affected me emotionally when I was in solitary, which definitely added to the strain with my ex and kids. And when you get released, you're having to relearn how to work with people, to be emotionally connected to people in society. So when you're incarcerated, you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable to anybody around you. Because if you're vulnerable, then people can use that vulnerability. So you have all these walls up. So you come out into the real world, and if you want to emotionally connect with people, even on a friendship level, you've got to pull some of those walls down. And that can be hard. It was interesting. I'm going to get to the family's progression here. So I was thinking about this as I was going through it. I had several sets of friends. I had my 12-step set of friends. I had my church set of friends. I had my game night set of friends, and I had my workout set of friends. Those were like my little friend circles there. And in each one, there was some level of vulnerability. I mean, 12-step, of course, it's 12-step. you're like pouring your emotional heart out there. Church, you have this shared spirituality and this forgiveness and hope that connects you. In my workout, you have this kind of endorphin connection. Like after you work out, you got this I love everybody type thing going on. And then in my game night, after the game night, it was this place where my friends there knew more about my past than any other place, except for maybe the 12-step group. But just organically, I shared my past with them more than anywhere else. Just because maybe it was because it was late at night on a Wednesday night and you feel more open then, maybe because they're all drinking. I wasn't drinking, I couldn't drink because of probation, but they're all welcoming and open. And so you're building these relationships, you're learning how to build relationships. And for me, that was really a first step, because one of my issues was I hadn't done a good job with building relationships before my arrest. Outside of people that I am related to by blood, there's really only one person, and he's my childhood friend since kindergarten, that I still have a friendship with.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I wasn't the best person at creating friendships. But, yeah, so that leads me to the family side of things. So I was saying, there was a lot of emotional stress from the arrest. I think there's a lot of emotional stress from my time incarcerated as well. So, a lot of difficulties just with trying to reunify there. And it's an ongoing process still with my kids, which it's a point of sadness, but I'm seeing hope now. So, I mean, it's been 3.5 years since my release, almost 4 years now. It'll be 4 in May, yeah. So I guess it's still 3.5. But yeah, so I do have a girlfriend now, Kelsey, she is just a wonderful human being. She loves and adores me. I do the same with her. We're both like, how did we get so lucky? And I'm looking at her like, you're dating an ex-con. You're saying you're the lucky one? Let's talk about this now for a minute. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. So she's on traveling right now on a side hustle of hers. And I'm house sitting and pet sitting. And I told her, this is making me rethink this relationship. For 2 dogs, 2 cats. Yeah, I'm not used to that. She's more of a command the world, get everything in order. I'm more of a free spirit, and I see why she has to be command the world and get everything in order thing with 4 animals living in the house with her. That's a lot. That's a lot. But yeah, so that's getting to the point where I was able to be in this relationship with Kelsey. It took some time though. I mean, I had some really awkward interactions with females when I first got out. Once I realized that I wasn't trying to reconcile anymore to recreate that marriage with my ex, it's hard to be that emotionally vulnerable and open to actually, let alone know how to do it. I hadn't dated since my ex and I met in 1997 when we were sophomores in undergrad.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I'm 41 now, so yeah, I hadn't really done the dating thing for a while. And this was the last time I dated. There were no apps. Cell phones really weren't a thing. I mean, it was on a college campus, so it was very awkward, very difficult. A lot of women gave me some really perplexed looks at times because they didn't know what I was saying, because I didn't know that you gave out cell phone numbers or that the way things work. So yeah, funny things like that. But yeah, so I got to this point, met Kelsey online, and we just hit it off, and it's been a wonderful ride. It's finding that real unconditional love in a person, again, is just this wonderful feeling. Finding someone who loves and supports you and that you can love and support is just an incredible feeling. It's one of those things where when you've been arrested, you wonder, will anybody actually accept me for who I am?
Right, yeah.
I mean, there's one thing to be accepted in a setting like this. Okay, yeah, you know what? I see the struggle you went through. Yeah, kudos to you for making it through, for sharing your voice. You're a human. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I love that. This is important. But there's another thing when it's actually that one-on-one, I'm going to emotionally bond myself, allow myself to emotionally bond with you. Right. This person who's done this stuff. So I share this story with my friends. Kelsey, I hope this is all right. So we had gone out on several dates, and it was the day of the World Cup Championship. So that was a Sunday, and I invited her to meet up with a couple of my friends after church down at Gus's to watch the World Cup, the championship game for the World Cup. And it was the Women's World Cup. Crazy, wild. USA wins the game. It's awesome. Say goodbye to our friends, and we go down a couple blocks down to a restaurant, and we're having lunch. And I'm like, okay, we've gone out on 3 dates, and I'm thinking to myself, I got to tell her eventually about my past.
Right.
So I kind of put down stuff like, I need to tell you something about my past. So yeah, I spent about 3 years in prison. I spent 6.5 months in solitary confinement because la-di-da. And she looks across the table at me. And her first response, full of sincerity, is, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That was her response. It wasn't a disgust. It wasn't she's got a pretty good level of success in her life. I mean, there's not many folks with my records running around in her friend circle. Right. So she looks at me like, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And I'd met people before, I dated people before, that had said that and had come out of a place of weakness. Like, I want to be loved, so I feel like the only person that can love me is somebody who is as broken and messed up as I am. And because of you being arrested, that proves to me you're broken and messed up. Kelsey looked at me and said, and saw, okay, you were broken. They tried to break you even more, but I see the strength that's in you now. And that is one of the things she's fallen in love with. And that's just the most incredible thing. I mean, Tink was just thinking about that right now. I mean, that's just one of the most incredible things, to have somebody that looks at your brokenness and your struggles and the fight that you went through and is in love with you because of, not because of the stuff you did, not because of the brokenness, but because of that strength that came from the brokenness. And it's like, wow. That just, it's wonderful. Oh my goodness.
It is wonderful.
Yeah. So it is finding that. I feel so fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. You had told me that before. I'm glad that you shared that with everybody, because it is a beautiful thing, and I completely agree with her. I'm sorry that you had to go through all that.
It was kind of funny. She joined me in Las Vegas. I mentioned I go on these long 1 week trips, and I'll go bumming around the woods. Not her scene. I love it. Yeah. But that one was ending up in Las Vegas for this workout group that I'm a part of. Was having their big annual get together. I was like, hey, why don't you come out and join me? She was like, sure, why not? So we tell our friends we're going out to Vegas. She's going to join me in Vegas for the weekend. And we get back, and the first response of all our friends is, where's the wedding ring?
Oh.
My dad even asked me, or actually, no, I'm sorry, my dad asked me, my uncle says, oh, I expected them to come back married. I mean, why else would you go to Vegas for a weekend? But yeah, so it's a wonderful, wonderful relationship now. So.
Awesome. I'm really happy for you. That's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Anything else? Oh my goodness.
I feel like we could go on for a while.
Oh yeah, I can talk. I think the most important thing is just being able to find what makes you you. And I mean, for me, it's that running through the woods and fighting that fight for those people who are affected by incarceration. For other people, it's writing. For other people, it's becoming successful in some area of life, starting their own business, or reconnecting with family or friends, or whatever it might be. I mean, I think the wonderful thing about being a human is we have the shared humanity, but each one of our stories is unique.
Yeah. And
when we let our uniqueness be what defines us, as opposed to something that's happened to us in the past and some label that somebody else has put on us, that uniqueness is what that wonderful story is.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you're sharing these stories. I mean, I think that's great, because there's so many wonderful people that I met when I was locked up. I mean, Born Star, the guy who's out there, I don't know what happened to him. I wish I knew his real name so I could try to track him down. If he's down there in Miami as a rapper now or whatnot. There was a guy I was locked up with. He was my bunkmate at Lunenburg. It's a big old dude. He ran the, I don't know, he can't get in trouble for this now because he's probably out at this point. He ran the books for the gambling in the building. He was just a great guy. He's a lovable teddy bear type of a guy. They all have these wonderful stories. I was teaching myself Arabic when I was locked up.
Oh, wow.
Because why not? Because you've got to do something else.
Yeah.
And he starts speaking Arabic to him. I'm looking at him like, you speak Arabic? He's like, of course I do. I learned it like when I was like 2 years old. And he like starts teaching me Arabic. And it's this, my cut mate, this guy, he makes G.I. Joe look like a couch potato. G.I. Joe looks like it's a dad bod besides. I mean, I'm talking like inverted pyramid type shape guy. And he and I are talking about like, what are you gonna do when you get out? And he's talking about this cleaning business. Like, dude, if you just start a workout, start some little like the John workout program, like the prison workout program, with your body as the calling card for it, man, you're gonna make money. Yeah. It's like I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, I mean, it's just all these wonderful people that I met. I mean, my best friend, he was arrested. We were born 2 days apart from each other. He was arrested the year that I graduated high school.
Oh, wow.
And he's still down. And Ghost is what he goes by. Just seeing the hope in this guy's eyes, even after being locked up for like 20 years. This guy's been locked up for 20 years, and he still has hope. Oh my goodness. Yeah. There's a guy that I was locked up with, and he was a board gamer. He liked playing games. And we'd somehow gotten a copy of Risk. And he has his girlfriend, or his wife, I don't remember which it was, send in the instructions for this other version of Risk that he likes better. He hires, actually we get together and hire one of our friends with cookies to make the expansion pack on this Risk board and to make the pieces so that we can play this more advanced version of Risk in our pod. And I mean, it's just getting people together like that. It's the stories and the humanity behind it all. It's such a wonderful thing. I don't like to say prison's a wonderful thing, but there are wonderful people in prison. And I really experienced that at Lunenburg. Little side story. Orange is the New Black came out when I was in solitary. And it made me mad because I could not see anything funny about life in solitary. Right, yeah. There was nothing humorous about that at all. Yeah. And I'm a guy who finds the best in everything. But I mean, I would hear about that show and it would make me mad. I don't get mad easily. It would make me mad that they would try to trivialize or add some comedic story to this person's experience in incarceration. Then I go to Lunenburg, a level 2, which is basically community college with barbed wire. And it's one of the funniest collections of people the most enjoyable, humorous collections of folks that I've ever met in my life. I was like, I get it now. Yeah. I get it. And that's the crazy thing. I bet every one of us that was in solitary at Norfolk would have been in general population in the state system. I don't think anyone there would be a person that you would be worried about pulling a knife on somebody. None of us were in there for violence on other inmates. Right. And that's a real disheartening thing. I'm going to keep on rambling now because I have more stories to say. There was this guy that, I don't know what he was in solitary for with me. I'd been in solitary for maybe a few weeks at this point. It was probably right before Christmas in 2016. And he was getting released. And like, well, where's your family? Like, I don't have any family in Virginia. I was like, we don't want to release him on the streets in Norfolk. Like, where's your family? In Colorado. It's like, so the counselor said, we can get you a bus ticket to this town in Colorado if that's where you want to go. It's like, sure. So he's going from, I don't know how long he's been in solitary, from solitary confinement in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm assuming he's maybe getting somebody showing him the direction to where the Greyhound station is. I think it was like 5 blocks from the jail. And he's getting on a Greyhound, going over halfway across the country to Colorado to get dropped off there. So I mean, there is so much craziness going on. But in the midst of that craziness are people like me, like Taj, like Tay, like Born Star, all these people that are living real lives. And it might not always be the life we want to live, but it sure is a life sometimes. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for chatting today.
Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you for letting me chat with you. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
I feel like I said, we could keep going.
Oh, definitely,
We'll keep it for now, and maybe we'll have to talk again sometime.
Definitely. You got me.
Give you a hug.
But thank you.
Thank you.